Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Primary Care Podcast. It's your boy, Dr. Mark List. Today's episode, no sponsor today, but before we get into today's episode, we're going to start with a joke from the primarycarepod@gmail.com inbox. You know, that's where you can send me jokes, articles, things you want to talk about, comments, reviews, whatever. Just hit me a line sometime. Today's joke is from an anonymous listener, Dr. List. Why did the transgender man only eat salads? Because he was an herbivore. He was her before. All right, let's start the podcast.
The Primary Care Podcast is written and edited by a family physician for an audience of other physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, residents, and medical students interested in primary care topics. This is not a podcast for patients and should not be used as medical advice. This is also a personal podcast produced on my own time and solely reflecting my personal opinions. Statements of this podcast do not reflect the views or policies of my employer, past or present, or any other organization with which I may be affiliated.
Thank you for listening to the Primary Care Podcast. I'm Dr. Mark List, here to bring you the latest news, guidelines, and updates from primary care sources around the globe. Keeping it under 15 minutes long because you're in a hurry and I'm not that smart. Well, welcome back to the podcast, pod friends, pod people, pod girls, pod boys. It's your pod doc, pod doctor, Dr. Mark List, whatever. Today, we are talking about a very relevant primary care topic. This comes to us on October 22nd of The Lancet. Cardiovascular outcomes in adults with hypertension with evening versus morning dosing of usual antihypertensives in the UK, a prospective, randomized, open-label, blinded endpoint clinical trial. So, background, I have heard forever and a day, and I've actually seen the studies that show that there have been multiple studies, in fact, that bedtime dosing of antihypertensive drugs were superior, at least having one dose of an antihypertensive taken at nighttime is supposed to be far superior than morning doses of blood pressure medicines. And historically, whenever I start people on a new blood pressure regimen, historically, I've always said, well, you can always take this in the morning, you take it at nighttime. The data says at least as long as you take one of your antihypertensives at nighttime, it's supposed to be better off. And why did I say that? Well, in 2010, there was a small study, about 2,000 participants, and it was a not randomized control trial, I guess, but it's randomized open label blinded, similar to this one. And this was done in Spain. And there was about a 33% relative risk reduction in patients of all major cardiovascular events, right? So MACE, right? A 33% reduction in MACE. And that includes cardiovascular deaths, myocardial infarctions, strokes, hemorrhagic strokes, ischemic strokes, etc. And 33% reduction if you just took your blood pressure medicine at nighttime. Okay. So again, historically, I've always been like, yeah, you should do that. Or you could consider that, right? And then there was a much larger study later, okay, and about 19,000 patients were involved in this. And this showed a 55% hazard ratio of evening treatments to morning treatments of MACE, right? Major adverse cardiac events. That's a really big change, right? So historically, again, when my patients have been on blood pressure medicines forever, and I know that they're going to be on them forever, I'll sometimes bring this up and talk just because this data was really important. Now, there were other studies done. I think there were a total of 8 studies that have, of the 10, there were 8 that this author group basically I'm going to read the quote from their article. 8 studies were determined to have high risk of bias, and only 2 were completed randomized studies that compared morning and bedtime dosing of antihypertensive medicines to cardiovascular outcomes. So they wanted to basically do this study, right? A randomized to morning, randomized to evening, take your blood pressure medicines. We're going to follow you for 5 years. We're going to have a diverse patient population. Just kidding. No, diverse patient population. Nope, just kidding. 90% were white. Haha, just kidding. But this was in the United Kingdom, so 90% were white. They had 10,000 in each group, and they really wanted to follow this up for at least 5 years. And in the study, okay, major adverse cardiac events were about 3.4% in the nighttime dose and only 3.7, so a little bit higher, in the morning treatment dose. for a non-statistically significant difference between the two groups. Now, why is this important? Well, for a while now, I have thought it was kind of standard of care that I should be educating my patients on the value of nighttime blood pressure medicine, just because of those 2 trials and specifically, but those other, there's been a total of 10 trials that have shown a significant impact on evening blood pressure. So this was, again, a negative study. And the event rate, the authors did say that their event rate was lower than expected, which might have been due to a healthy participant effect, but also reflecting decreasing rates of cardiovascular events in the general population of the UK, especially compared to like 10 years ago, et cetera. So what do we make of this, right? We've got a bunch of studies in the past that have shown trends towards there's a benefit to taking your pills at night. And then we have this study here that shows not really any statistical benefit, right, of taking your blood pressure medicine at night versus in the morning. So what do we do with this? Well, number one is it doesn't truly matter, right, if our patients take them at nighttime, if they take them in the daytime. I think I'm going to still default, just out of caution, say, well, certainly, you could take your blood pressure medicine at nighttime if it didn't affect your sleep at all. And, some studies have said that might lower your risk for heart attack or stroke and might be better off. But other studies have basically said there is no value, either morning or nighttime, doesn't really matter. Where this is relevant is that when it comes to hydrochlorothiazide, chlorthalidone, some of your diuretic medications, if your patient was only on a single agent and you were advising them to take their only blood pressure medicine at nighttime, that absolutely could have negative deleterious effects on their health, right? Even though you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get a 30% or a 50% reduction in major cardiac events if I take their blood pressure at nighttime. Clearly, this is what I need to do. I need to tell them to take their blood pressure medicine at night. If their only blood pressure medicine that they're taking is a diuretic and they have to take their diuretic at nighttime to get benefit, then you'd see a significant impact likely on their sleep quality, having to get up and go to the bathroom all the time. So, in my opinion, I like that this trial gives me a little bit more leeway to be freed from the you need to take your blood pressure medicine at night when I prescribe an initial antihypertensive. I can give them the option to, saying that there's more studies that favor nighttime, but it's really up to you, whatever works best for you and your lifestyle and whatever gives you the least amount of side effects and allows you to continue taking it and to remember to take it. Because again, if you look at some of these long-term blood pressure trials, if you look in the real world, there are some studies that say 20 to 30% of patients don't routinely take their blood pressure medicines on a daily basis, which absolutely negatively impacts their health way more than taking a blood pressure at night versus taking it in the morning. So is this going to change my practice? Probably not practice changing. I'm still probably going to recommend nighttime just because the overwhelming other studies basically point to improvement of blood pressure. Improvement of major adverse cardiac events with nighttime dosing. But at least this gives me a little bit more freedom, a little bit more leeway when it comes to if I forget to, tell a patient to take their medicine at night, or if I just want to see how they're doing on a blood pressure medicine, I don't need to necessarily educate them that they have to take it at nighttime. So at least makes me feel a little bit better, and I guess takes a little bit more of the burden off prescribing. So again, if you've heard historically, if you've always been a nighttime blood pressure medicine changer or prescriber, maybe no reason to change. But if you haven't started, hopefully this discussion gave you a little bit more background into some of the data, some of the studies behind it. If you've never heard about that before, well, welcome to the conversation. Woo! Reminder, you don't need to stay up all night to stay up to date. This has been Dr. Mark List with the Primary Care Podcast. Choking on my spit as I talk here. Thanks for tuning in this week. See you next week. Thanks, bye.